Here's how you can get vintage 12-bit sampler crunch for cheap. To take your drums from this to this. This is the Roland S-330, a 12-bit sampler from 1987 that you can still pick up for dirt cheap. Last I checked, they go for about $200, give or take. It's by far the best deal in a vintage 12-bit sampler that does the vintage 12-bit sampler thing. And it sounds incredible on drums. Let's go through a simple workflow that can get you dozens of crunchy 12-bit drum kits from pretty much any collection of run-of-the-mill drum hits. I've prepared some drum hits in Ableton to use as our raw material. I've put kick, snare, closed hi-hat, and open hi-hat on every beat, which, when we're done with this process, will give us chops that will fit neatly onto a 4x4 grid for an Ableton drum rack or an MPC SB404 Mark II machine, your favorite drum pad controller. Once we've got our hits ready, we can send them to the S330 to sprinkle magic on it. I'm using a web-based editor I built for the S330 to make using it a lot friendlier. While it's technically possible to use the unit with just its front panel controls, it was really meant to be used with a CRT monitor and an MSX mouse, which is really hard to find and expensive when you do, or the even rarer RC100 remote controller. And then you've got to find space to put all that hardware. When it was cutting edge in 1987, mouse control and a glorious 480p display may have been a futuristic selling point, but it's just a nuisance now, and much of the reason this little gem is so cheap. So I built a dead simple-to-use web editor that makes it super easy to control the unit with just your web browser and the computer you already have. And I made it open source so everyone can use it. You can find out more and start using it at audiocontrol.org. I'll leave links in the description. Once you connect a cheap video capture device, I got one online for like $20 or $30, you can see the sampler's native display in the web app. There's a virtual front panel that gives you the same buttons that's on the sampler itself, so you can just use your mouse and keyboard shortcuts. Or in my case, a cheap controller that maps the virtual front panel keyboard shortcuts to dedicated buttons and a data wheel. Unfortunately for our demo here, the sampler ignores MIDI commands in the sampling screen. My guess is to make sure MIDI processing doesn't bog down the hamsters in the machine while it's trying to convert audio to digital on a 40-year-old computer. So to get to the sampling screen, you have to click the mode button, scroll down to util, then pick an empty source slot. We'll keep the sampling frequency at 30 kilohertz for now, and set the record time to the full 7.2 seconds available for a single sample. We'll also set the threshold to 8, which seems like a good setting to keep it out of the noise floor, but also catch most of the initial transients. We'll check levels to make sure we're coming in hot, but not too hot. And the other thing we'll do is increase the speed of the source drum hits by doubling the tempo in Ableton and setting the warp mode to repitch so it plays back twice as fast and twice as high. Then we'll pitch the sample back down to normal speed, or maybe a bit slower, in the sampler. That will give us double the sampling time, plus the extra grit you get from pitching samples way down on these older devices. And that's where much of that characteristic 12-bit sampler sound comes from. So to start sampling, once we've set up the parameters, click the command button, then choose the auto option to put it into listening mode, then hit play on Ableton, and it will sample as much as will fit into 7.2 seconds. And when it's done, it sounds like this. Experiment with sample playback by trying out different MIDI notes. Higher notes play back faster and are pitched higher. Low notes play slower and are pitched lower. I tend to like a few semitones lower than normal playback speed. When you found the sound you like, record it back from the sampler to a new track in Ableton. Now, before we chop these up, let's do one more sampling pass, this time at 15 kilohertz, so half the sample rate of the first one. Once you've changed the sample rate on the sampling screen, it's the same process as before. Press the command button to put it into listening mode, Play your original drum hits again. This time you'll get twice the recording time, 14.4 seconds, because it's recording at half the sample rate. Then record this new sample back into Ableton. This one will have even more sampling artifacts, as well as less high-end frequency response. Here's the 30 kHz sample and the 15 kHz sample back to back. Now we'll chop up these longer samples and simpler to create kits we can reuse from session to session. We'll start by trimming the clips so each hit lands on a quarter note. Then create a simpler track and drag the trimmed region to simpler to load it up. Change the mode to slice, which by default will slice it on transient boundaries. Each slice is now mapped to its own MIDI note so you can play each hit independently. Change the playback mode to poly so you can play different slices simultaneously. Then choose Slice to Drum Rack, which will replace Simpler with the same slices in a new drum rack instance. And now all your kits are mapped to rows across your drum pads, or chromatically up the keyboard, or however you like to trigger your drum samples. Here's the 30 kHz hits. Here's the 15 kHz hits. And now you have yourself a bunch of new drum kits with vintage 12-bit sampler fairy dust on them, all from this source.